In a small town on the outskirts stood a cozy diner, known for its warm, friendly service and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that always drew passers-by. But there was something more to this place than just hot meals and drinks. A story lingered in the shadows, hidden from all but those who truly paid attention to the details. Every morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the windows, a young boy entered the diner. He was quiet, reserved, and, as everyone in town believed, mute. His name was Anton, and he came with a single purpose: to sit at the corner table by the window, silently observing the world around him. He never spoke, never asked for anything but a glass of water, which was left for him on the table. The townsfolk had grown accustomed to this routine. The boy arrived, sat, and left without a word. The diner was served by a waitress named Irene, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a smile that could melt even the coldest heart. Irene noticed Anton from the very first day he stepped into the diner. She was curious about who he was, why he remained silent, and what compelled him to return each day. She saw him sit quietly, staring out the window, sometimes seeming to wait for something. But Irene never asked questions. She simply left him his glass of water and checked on him a few times during the day to see if he needed anything else. Over time, she began to feel a strange connection to him. She couldn't explain what drew her to this silent, enigmatic boy, but the feeling was powerful. Weeks passed, and one day, while sitting at his usual table, Anton suddenly stood and approached the counter. He gestured to Irene that he wanted to write something. Surprised, she handed him a pen and paper. The boy scribbled a brief message. "I can't speak, but I need something special. I know you can help." Irene looked at him in astonishment, but something in his eyes made her believe him. She nodded and wrote back, "What do you want?" "I'll do what I can." Anton paused, then wrote, "I come here every morning because you're the only one who understands me. You give me something I can't find anywhere else." The words were simple, but they touched Irene deeply. From that day, their relationship changed. Each morning, when Anton arrived, Irene didn't just bring him water. She'd slip him small treats, something sweet or warm to lift his spirits. Sometimes, when the diner was empty, she'd sit beside him in silence. It was more than just her job. It was a quiet understanding they both felt. As time passed, Irene noticed Anton always sat at the same table, but his gaze grew more anxious. He began glancing around, as if expecting something. One evening, as the sun set and most customers had left, he lingered, staring at the empty street. Irene approached and, as usual, asked if he needed anything. He looked at her, fear in his eyes. He wrote, "I know you're helping me, but there's something I can't tell you. It's dangerous. They're watching me." Irene's blood ran cold. Who could be watching him? A boy who never spoke a word? That night, Irene couldn't sleep. The cryptic message haunted her. Who were they? Why did the boy feel in danger? What was he hiding? The next morning, Anton arrived as usual, but his behavior was off. He seemed nervous, constantly glancing around. Irene approached and noticed his hand trembling as he tried to write. He scribbled quickly, "Don't tell anyone, but I know a secret that could change everything. I shouldn't have come here." Then he stood abruptly and left without looking back. Irene stood holding his note, unsure what to do. What was this secret? Why had he left so suddenly? And what did he mean by "shouldn't have come here"? Days passed, and Irene noticed Anton stopped coming to the diner. He vanished. It was strange, as he'd never missed a visit. She grew worried, asking neighbors and locals, but no one knew anything. His disappearance puzzled everyone. Weeks later, Irene began to let go of thoughts of the boy. But one morning, as she opened the diner, her eyes fell on a newspaper on the counter. The headline caught her attention. "Boy missing for weeks found dead in abandoned house outside town." Irene froze. The photo in the article was Anton. She soon learned he wasn't an ordinary boy. He'd been part of a program testing new technologies. His silence tied to trauma he'd endured, his identity concealed from the public. As a key witness in the project, someone had silenced him to keep the program's secrets buried. Irene was stunned. Everything she thought she knew about him was an illusion, though her feelings for him were real. She couldn't believe the quiet, harmless boy was part of such a dangerous world. But as she turned and looked at an old photo on the diner's wall, filled with customers, something caught her eye. Among them was a man she didn't recall. His gaze was sharp, his expression cryptic and sinister. She couldn't understand why she hadn't noticed him before. In that moment, she realized the story wasn't over. A chill ran down her spine. She was now part of this story, and she had to uncover how deep this conspiracy went. The secret she needed to unravel lay in every word Anton had written, every glance she'd encountered in the diner. Most importantly, she realized she couldn't simply close this chapter and move on. Each day, Irene felt her life changing. What was once an ordinary routine now seemed part of something darker, more dangerous than she could have imagined. Sitting in her small office at the back of the diner, Irene tried to piece together what she'd learned. Anton's involvement in the program, his disappearance, the newspaper with his photo, the man she hadn't noticed before, all of it gnawed at her. Her thoughts returned to the man in the photo among the diner's old customers. He was someone she'd seen every morning, yet he'd never stood out. Tall, with dark hair and a stern face, he blended in with the regulars. She'd never suspected he could be involved in something bigger. But now, seeing his face in the newspaper, she realized something was off. The determination in his eyes, the subtlety of his gestures. It spoke of someone who didn't belong in the open. Irene decided she couldn't let it go. She needed to uncover the project, the program behind Anton's disappearance. Who was this man? What was his connection to the events that had upended her life? She visited the local library, hoping to find information about programs in the area. She spent hours poring over old newspapers and records, but found only vague mentions of a secretive research facility on the town's outskirts, with no official details about its operations. Days later, on a cloudy morning, Irene returned to the diner to talk to the locals. She knew regulars sometimes shared rumors not found in official sources. She took her place behind the counter, her heart racing. She had to find the truth. As she entered, only a few customers were present. Her eyes fell on one, a quiet old man named Victor, a former soldier who'd served in covert operations. Irene knew him, but had never discussed anything serious with him. He was always reserved, but something in his gaze today suggested he knew something important. Irene approached and sat at his table. Victor looked up and nodded slightly. "Morning, Victor," she said, hiding her nervousness. "How's it going?" "Same as always," he replied, his voice gruff. "What's new?" Irene leaned closer, avoiding his piercing eyes, knowing they might reveal more than she was ready to hear. "I've been looking into a project tied to the boy, Anton," she said, not hiding her concern. "And I think you know something about it." Victor sighed and leaned back, his face darkening. He was silent for a moment before speaking. "You need to be careful, Irene," he said finally. "You don't know what you're getting into." "What do you mean?" she asked, a little frightened. Victor met her gaze, his eyes glinting in the dim light. He leaned closer and whispered, "It wasn't just a project, and Anton wasn't just a boy. He was part of something much bigger than you can imagine. That program wasn't about helping kids like him. It was designed to use people like him for experiments. And trust me, Irene, Anton knew it. He was important not just because he was silent, but because he could see things others couldn't." Irene's chest tightened. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. Anton was part of an experiment, a program exploiting children for unknown purposes. "You're saying he knew his life was an experiment?" she asked, struggling to process it. Victor nodded. "Yes. And he was trying to escape, Irene. He tried to run, but they caught him. They always knew where he was. You can't imagine who's behind this program. It's not just researchers. It's people with power far beyond your understanding." Irene was in shock. She tried to grasp the scale of what was happening, but it was too complex, too tangled to fully comprehend. Then it hit her. She might be caught in something far more dangerous. Everything she knew about her world was false, and now she had to figure out how to escape it. "What do I do?" she asked Victor, still reeling. Victor exhaled and looked at her. "Be careful. You need to find Who's behind this program? That's the only way to understand what's happening and maybe stop it. But know this, they won't leave you alone. It's dangerous. A chill ran through her. This was far more serious than she'd expected. She had to act quickly before it was too late. Days later, Irene decided to find where it all began. She knew of an old abandoned house on the outskirts, often visited by strangers. Hidden among trees, it might hold clues to the program. She prepared for the trip, taking a few essentials, and went alone despite Victor's warnings. Every moment spent in ignorance brought her closer to danger, and she couldn't afford to wait. When Irene reached the house, her heart raced. The doors were locked, but she could see dark, empty rooms through a broken window. She carefully climbed inside. The silence was eerie, and a sense of unease clung to her. In one room, what she found shook her to her core. Photos lined the walls, images from the newspaper, but not just of Anton. Other program participants were there too. In one photo, she saw the man from the diner. He appeared in every image. Irene realized he wasn't just a random visitor. He was part of something far more sinister. Then she heard a noise in the hallway. Her heart pounded. Someone was there. Irene froze, listening to every sound in the dark hallway. Her breathing deepened, and she tried to stay still. Something was wrong. The noise grew louder, distinct footsteps. Clenching her fists, Irene racked her brain for a plan. No calming thoughts came. She fought her rising panic, her heart pounding so loudly it echoed in her ears. Glancing around, she spotted an old wardrobe in the corner, the only place to hide. She darted to it, slipped inside, and curled up, trying not to make sound. Silence held for a moment, then the footsteps resumed, steady, confident, as if the person owned the place. Her eyes flicked to the window she'd entered through. She needed to escape, but she couldn't leave without answers. Her drive to unravel the mystery, to be part of something bigger, left her no choice. She had to know who was behind the project, who caused Anton's disappearance, and why it connected to her diner's visitors. The footsteps softened, and Irene cautiously peeked out. For a moment, she thought she might see something crucial. Then her gaze locked with a stranger at the hallway's end, motionless. It was the man from the photos, always near Anton. He held a folder with papers peeking out, studying her with interest. Their eyes met, and Irene's heart stopped. He knew she was there. "You should have left, Irene," he said, his voice cold and calm, as if he'd tracked her every move. He stepped forward, and Irene realized she couldn't hide. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice weak, words struggling to form. "I'm the one who watches," he replied with a faint smirk. "I track every step you take. I saw you climb to this point. You're too far in to stop. We've always been watching you. You thought Anton was the only one caught in this, but you're wrong. You're one of them too." Irene felt the ground slip away. His words hit like a blow, as if she'd just grasped the enormity of what surrounded her. She couldn't believe him. She was just a woman working at a diner, watching customers come and go like anyone else. But now, facing him, something in his words made her feel she was entangled in something horrific. "What do you want from me?" she asked, unable to hide her fear. He chuckled, slowly closing the folder, his eyes scanning her. "We wanted you to see you can't just be a bystander. You're part of this, Irene. You always have been. You watched Anton, and, at some point, you became part of the program. You're our new experiment." Irene's legs buckled. She couldn't process what she heard. Her world, where she was just an ordinary woman with a simple job, crumbled before her. She felt trapped in a terrifying maze with no exit. The man approached, his steps light, like a hunter closing in on prey. "You don't get it," he said. "We've learned so much watching you. You were part of something bigger. You thought you controlled your life, but you were just a piece in a game you never chose." Irene clenched her fists. She couldn't let him win. She couldn't be a pawn in their hands. Stepping forward, her voice firm, she said, "I won't be part of your experiment. I'll find a way to stop you. I won't stand by and watch you ruin lives." The man paused, his eyes narrowing as if weighing her resolve. For a moment, he seemed to consider what she could do. Then his face returned to its cold calm. You don't understand, Irene. You can't stop what's already begun. You can't find a way out because all the doors are locked. Your life isn't yours anymore. It's part of something far greater. He turned abruptly and walked to the door, saying no more. Irene stood in the hallway, her hopes of escaping this web shattered. But a resolve grew within her. She couldn't let the project continue. She couldn't leave it as it was. Irene fled the house and returned to the diner. Her heart raced with fear, but she knew she had to act. She had to warn others, to expose what was hidden. Back at the diner, she looked at her customers, the regulars who came daily. Their faces made her realize she couldn't stay silent. She couldn't leave them in the dark, as she once was. From that day, Irene vowed to fight. She'd start by uncovering everything the project's masterminds hid. She wouldn't sit idly by as their lives were used for dark purposes. Irene knew her life had changed, and she had to be the one to unravel this mystery, to stop this horror. In that moment, she understood. True choice begins when everything seems decided. She wasn't going to be a piece in their game. She was going to change the rules.